at the end of the convention, he was asked if he were president, what would he do differently and what would he do to successfully combat COVID? And he said, well, I would absolutely mandate masks. Now, this is an interesting proposition because it has no constitutional basis. I'm Dr. Duke, and this is Constitution Corner. And on Constitution Corner, what we try to do is not just explain what the Constitution is or remind you how important the Constitution is, but to show you the state of the Constitution as a document being ignored or adopted or adhered to today. And boy, is it really not being adhered to by our friends in the Democrat Party. Watching this convention, the Democrat convention that ultimately nominated Joe Biden, it really amazed me how many of the speakers, the various speakers, were espousing constitutional platitudes, right? Saying that without really much evidence, that the Republicans were anti-constitution, they were dragging us into a fascist theocracy, how the Republicans were destroying the rule of law, trying to prevent people from voting, and there's really not a shred of evidence that any of that is true. And I just couldn't get past the gall of the fact that these people were throwing around these charges of anti and unconstitutionalism when almost every speaker was supporting a number of various completely unconstitutional initiatives. To give you the most egregious example, towards the end of the convention, Joe Biden was interviewed about what he would do, right? They all beat up on Donald Trump for not somehow fixing the COVID problem, even though much of what Donald Trump did is exactly what they would have said to have done. Remember that while Nancy Pelosi was arguing that Donald Trump was a racist and a xenophobe for canceling travel to China back in February, Trump knew better. And after a couple more weeks, Nancy Pelosi changed her tune, right? She changed her tune and then blamed Trump for not having done it earlier than he did. But at the end of the convention, he was asked if he were president, what would he do differently and what would he do to successfully combat COVID? And he said, well, I would absolutely mandate masks. Now, this is an interesting proposition because it has no constitutional basis. When you think about what's going on at the state level and at the federal level, how quickly the American people have gotten used to, if not comfortable with, lawless, non-constitutional mandates being issued by governors, by state departments of health. In Utah, we have a situation where the order for all school children to wear masks in the state of Utah as school begins again here in fall, that comes not from the governor's office. It comes not from the Utah legislature. It comes from the Utah Department of Education. We mentioned the governor of Virginia, Northam, who has a terrible history himself. This guy is the who somehow managed to survive cancel culture for having worn a Ku Klux Klan outfit at a party when he was a young man, a man who's a self-identified physician and doctor who believes that a woman has a right to destroy her child up to and through the process of birth. Northam said that if we get a vaccine in our hands, we will absolutely mandate that every citizen of Virginia is compelled and forced to take it. These things are completely unconstitutional. There is no legality behind them. You can say them loudly. You can get a bunch of people in masks that look like doctors wearing lab coats to stand behind you and say them, but they are not laws. There is not the constitutional right to engage in this behavior is not to be found in the documents. And so go back to the Biden situation. That he was pushed. Some reporters actually started pushing back against Biden when he said that he would absolutely mandate that masks were worn. Well, finally, enough people had come after him in the news. A lot of the commentary pointed out that you do not have that authority. As a matter of fact, the progressives, one of the things they've been most angry about Donald Trump about is that he hasn't done it. This is the same progressive caucus who thinks that everything Donald Trump supersedes the Constitution and sets up lawless tyranny. And yet, the one way that they go after him with regards to COVID is why hasn't he mandated masks? And you see, I think, the irony and the hypocrisy of this, right? If Donald Trump is the fascist autocrat you say he is, and if he is the monster who goes around superseding the Constitution as you have defined him, then why are you arguing that when it comes to COVID, he should be doing that? The very thing you said he shouldn't do. And your candidate for president, your nominee, says he will do The very thing you accuse Donald Trump of doing, creating a mandate going around the Constitution to enforce on the American people something that is not legitimately constitutionally legal. It shows you the situation we find ourselves in. Meanwhile, CNN's Chris Cuomo, the kind of fake anchor guy who during the COVID lockdown apparently was sneaking out of his house and not obeying the protocols, became national news. He came out and said the other day that the reason that we should not pay attention to the hypocrisies of the Democrat Party. The Democrats who want absolute mask wearing, no going to church, no church services, but yet applaud the protests in the street. Chris Cuomo actually came out and said the two things are utterly unrelated. One is just church, not a big deal. We should be able to sanction them for going. Those protests, Cuomo said, would result in serious riots if we didn't let them happen. Apparently, Chris doesn't realize that serious riots are what you've got. These kind of hypocrisies and these kind of fake mandates, even in the name of health, are going to undo the republic. I'm Dr. Duke. Don't just know your Constitution, live it. This has been Liberty News Hour. As always, you can go to thenewamerican.com and jbs.org for more information on these topics as well as more stories.